The Las Vegas Aces came out swinging with everything except good basketball. Elbows flying, bodies flopping, whistles swallowed. It was all there. They thought physical intimidation would rattle Indiana. But the Fever didn't blink. Every shove from Agile Wilson, every cheap attempt to slow them down was met with grit, pace, and a counterpunch. And when Kelsey Mitchell started drilling dagger shots that cut the arena noise to silence, it wasn't just scoring, it was revenge. This night wasn't only about stealing a win, it was about exposing Vegas's dirty playbook and flipping their arrogance back in their faces. And you'll want to hear what Kelsey Mitchell had to say after the Indiana Fever was targeted all game by Wilson's antics. Hours before tip-off, the Vegas spotlight was all about Agile Wilson collecting her MVP trophy. The arena was supposed to be basking in glory, celebrating dominance, reminding everyone who runs this league. But by the final buzzer, that shiny trophy looked more like a distraction than a crown. The moment that was meant to cement the Aces' aura instead set the stage for their unraveling. From the first quarter, everything they assumed would come easy turned out to be anything but. And Agile Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces lose Game 1 on their home court to the Indiana Fever, 89-73. The Indiana Fever were in control of this game from start to finish. There was a small little patch there in the third quarter. We started saying, are the Aces gonna come back? But Kelsey Mitchell and Odyssey Sims said, no, they're not going to come back, not at all. The narrative before the game had already been written by media chatter. Vegas was untouchable, the clear favorite, and Indiana was just filler. Experts dismissed the Fever as background noise, pointing to injuries that gutted the roster. Caitlin Clark was sidelined, Sophie Cunningham was out, Sydney Colson unavailable, and more names stacked on the list. 6 players gone. Most commentators treated the matchup like a formality. Vegas had the pedigree, the championships, the so-called real Aces swagger. Indiana supposedly didn't belong. Becky Hammon even fueled the arrogance herself, reminding the media that Indiana hadn't seen the true Aces yet. Translation: this game was supposed to be a beatdown. But here's the thing. While Vegas fed on its own hype, the Fever were quietly dismissed. Analysts barely mentioned them except as the other name on the scoreboard. That kind of disrespect turned out to be the best thing for Indiana. Because when no one expects you to do anything, the pressure disappears. You play free. And from the opening tip, that freedom was written all over the Fever's game. But on the court, the Fever crashed the party. Kelsey Mitchell dropped a playoff career-high 34 points to spoil the night with an 89-73 win. In the second half, I just felt like our physicality and our that to the best. Our pursuit, our pursuit was not there. Like we died on screens. You have to have second and third efforts. Even if you know you might be beat, you still have to try hard to get back into the play, and I don't think we tried hard in that category. Indiana didn't shrink. They pushed tempo, zipped the ball around, and looked sharper than the supposedly unbeatable 2-time champs. The Aces, for all their chest-puffing confidence, looked flat. They were the ones hesitating, the ones second-guessing. Suddenly, the weight of expectation wasn't on Indiana. It was on Vegas, the team with rings, the team told they'd cruise, now staring at an opponent that refused to fold. It's funny how fast swagger morphs into panic when the underdog won't break. By the night's end, the headlines flipped. Here's the stat that turned heads. In a best-of-5 series, 72% of teams that take Game 1 win the whole thing. That upset wasn't just a win. It was a seismic shift. And it happened in the Aces' own building. The turning point was Indiana's refusal to cave. Once the Fever proved they weren't going anywhere, Vegas abandoned clean basketball and leaned into something uglier. You could see the shift clearly. The Aces stopped trusting their sets, stopped playing their flowing offense, and instead resorted to pushing, jawing, and taking shortcuts. What began as a coronation turned into a scramble, and leading the way in the meltdown was none other than Agile Wilson. Rather than leading with skill, she set the tone with elbows and theatrics. She threw forearms off the ball, wedged herself into Fever players after whistles, and shoved during transitions where defense wasn't even a factor. The flopping was even more embarrassing, crashing to the floor as if she'd been hit by a truck, when slow-motion replays showed little more than incidental contact. At one point, She literally hooked an opponent's arm, dragged herself down, and acted like the victim. These weren't power moves. They were desperation tactics from a star who knew she was losing control. And in this pathetic foul to start the game off with, but ball never lies, I love when karma happens. Yeah, miss your free throw. I mean, here we go. Check this out. A foul. Look at this one. She swings her elbows on Powers, and Powers just holding it round, but it's a foul. Let's go through this. This is A'ja Wilson. I'm so big and bad. No, you didn't get touched. It wasn't that cool. You made a layup. Her teammates followed suit. Jackie Young threw her hips like a linebacker on screens. Off-ball defenders leaned shoulders and elbows into Fever players who couldn't even see the hits coming. All under the guise of physical play. The goal was obvious. Disrupt Indiana's rhythm, grind the game into something messy. But instead of rattling the Fever, it energized them. But then, Aaliyah Boston swings her elbows around and makes a shot, but no, she can't do it. She's a Fever. An Indiana Fever. She said, that's a flop. That's what Caitlin said. Here we go. A'ja Wilson, look at her trying to flop to get a call. Nobody touch you. And this is the biggest bullcrap of the game. So Kelsey Mitchell goes in for a layup. A'ja Wilson shows them their lip, so they review it. We see an Indiana Fever player get a review when they're called for a foul, and they zoom in with the microscope and call it technical. They call it technical on Kelsey Mitchell if Indiana fed off every cheap shot. Each hard foul didn't break their focus. It sharpened it. Kelsey Mitchell demanded the ball with even more urgency, drilling clutch shots that quieted the Vegas crowd. Odyssey Sims pressed up on defense like her life depended on it. Natasha Howard and Brianna Turner anchored the paint with toughness and discipline, refusing to retaliate but refusing to back down either. For a roster everyone wrote off hours earlier, the fight turned into fuel. That's the irony here. The Aces, champions, all-stars, and Olympians, led by the newly crowned MVP, were supposed to be the ones calm and composed. Instead, they were the ones unraveling. Their antics revealed the truth. They were losing the game on its merits. And when arrogance dissolves into flops and shoves, the mask slips. Vegas wasn't dominating. They were desperate. Meanwhile, Indiana flipped the script entirely. The more Vegas tried to bully, the stronger the Fever grew. The swagger belonged to Mitchell, Hull, and the rest of the roster who refused to flinch. And in the end, the dirty play that was supposed to intimidate only highlighted the Aces' weakness. Vegas wanted a statement game. They got one all right. Just not the statement they expected. Once it became clear Indiana wasn't breaking, Las Vegas ditched basketball and tried to drag the game into a street fight. The Aces threw shoves in the lane, knocked bodies to the floor, and flopped so dramatically the entire crowd rolled its eyes. It was obvious. The moment the scoreboard stopped tilting their way, they turned to desperation. But instead of folding, the Fever fed off it. Missing 6 players already, they took every hit as motivation. Each cheap trick lit another spark, and that energy grew into something Vegas couldn't contain. And no one embodied that fight more than Kelsey Mitchell. She didn't just answer the Aces' antics, she punished them. Her 34-point masterpiece was a clinic in composure. No matter how much contact she absorbed, she carved up the defense with fearless drives and cold-blooded jumpers. Vegas could jaw on her face, bump her on screens, even shove her after whistles, and she still rose up to drill shot after shot. Every bucket screamed the same message. Vegas could win the side scuffles, but Mitchell was winning the game. For all the MVP hardware sitting on the Aces' shelf, not a single one of their stars came close to the night she had. She wasn't carrying the load alone either. Odyssey Sims played like she had been waiting years for this stage. Every drive was fearless, every defensive stand was disruptive. But more than the numbers, it was her leadership that showed through. She slowed possessions when Vegas tried to bait the Fever into chaos, then pushed pace at the perfect moments to cut the Aces open. Her presence was the steadying force that made Indiana look like the seasoned playoff team, while Vegas, the 2-time champs, looked like the group cracking under pressure. Natasha Howard and Brianna Turner were just as vital in the paint. Against Wilson and the rest of Vegas's bigs, they didn't shy away. They stood firm, rotated with discipline, and made every post touch a war. It wasn't about highlight blocks or flashy plays. It was about erasing comfort zones. The Aces, so used to scoring easy inside, were suddenly wading through mud. Every possession became a grind, and the more Vegas forced it, the uglier their offense looked. And then there was Lexi Hull. She may not have dropped 30 points, but her impact was undeniable. Tasked with hounding Jackie Young, she delivered a defensive masterclass. Every shot Young took was contested, every cut met with resistance, every possession a draining effort. Hull's plus 24 plus minus wasn't just a stat. It was proof of how suffocating her defense had been. The bruises she took, the shoves she endured, the dives on the floor, those didn't just inspire her team, they silenced a star Vegas had counted on. Indiana didn't just withstand the Aces' attempt to turn basketball into a brawl. They outclassed them. They absorbed every dirty tactic, and left with composure intact and victory in hand. But the most crushing blow wasn't Mitchell's daggers or Sims's steadiness. It came from Aaliyah Boston, who took the league's MVP and reduced her to frustration personified. The irony couldn't have been sharper. Hours earlier, A'ja Wilson held the MVP trophy in front of a roaring home crowd. But once the game tipped, that crown weighed heavy. Every time Wilson tried to post up, Boston was there first, locking position and forcing collisions. Each shot attempt was smothered, every drop step turned into a battle of strength. Wilson didn't just miss, she struggled. 6 makes on 22 attempts. That's not dominance, that's frustration. They don't want to talk about it. Yeah, her missing layup, after layup, after layup. They want to talk about Caitlin Clark missing a 3-pointer from half court where she gets people falling into her legs. But nobody wants to talk about A'ja Wilson looking like Angel Reese, missing point-blank layups all game long. In a playoff game, 6 for 22, and it wasn't just Boston. Turner and Howard joined in, forming a wall of discipline that suffocated the Aces superstar. Instead of clean spins and smooth finishes, Wilson was left throwing up contested fadeaways and begging referees for whistles. Replay after replay showed the same story. Indiana's defense was prepared, and Wilson had no answers. The contrast between stars couldn't have been clearer. Boston carried herself with calm, executing the plan without panic, sticking to her fundamentals. Wilson, meanwhile, unraveled. She complained to refs, leaned into flops, and forced bad shots. One player looked like a leader ready for the moment. The other looked like someone who had read too many headlines about her own greatness. Even Becky Hammond, usually sharp with adjustments, seemed rattled. Instead of crediting Indiana's execution, she brushed the loss off as missed chances. She didn't dare admit the truth, that Boston had outright dominated her MVP. That refusal to acknowledge the obvious only amplified the perception that Indiana had exposed the champs. The poetic justice was almost too perfect. Wilson received the league's highest honor in the afternoon, only to be humbled that very night, and as she trudged off her own home floor, it wasn't the MVP chants echoing, it was the celebration of a fever team that had just flipped the script. Inside the Indiana locker room, the energy was electric. They hadn't just stolen a win, they had stolen the narrative. And when Kelsey Mitchell finally spoke, battered but unbowed, her words said it all. You can't just respect their game. They have the best player in the world on their team. They have unbelievable guards, so you have to respect who they are. Unbelievable PG, and so you know what they bring to the table as far as their resume and everything they done about the course of the season. You have to respect that. You just hope that, 50-50, it follow a certain way. You like to think that, your effort and your ability to, show up and just compete can, make you have a win. One game in, the math already tilts their way. In best-of-5 series, 72% of Game 1 winners advance. That stat isn't a guarantee, but it's a roadmap. And right now, Indiana is driving it. For the Aces, the embarrassment cut deep. They had won 18 of their last 19 games heading into this matchup. They had swagger, momentum, and home court. But that all crumbled in one night. Their MVP was shackled, their offense sputtered, and their supposed invincibility disappeared. We've got to keep the main thing, and that is us playing to a standard of basketball that we want to have as an Indiana Fever organization and franchise. We've got to keep our layers, the outside, the people in our building and the people in our locker room. And the thing I'm just so proud of with this group is it doesn't matter who's on the floor, it doesn't matter who's on our roster. They give each other the freedom to be themselves. They empower one another to be themselves and to be the best version of themselves. And every time we've had a change, every time we've brought someone in, every time we've had rotational changes, they're for each other. They live the we over the me. And when you have that, it just gives you opportunities to do really special things. Now they're staring down game 2, knowing full well another loss at home would mean the unthinkable, traveling to Indianapolis with elimination looming. And let's be clear, Vegas has adjustments to make. They'll try to jam Mitchell harder, probably glue Jackie Young to her hip to keep her from catching fire again. They'll try to feed Wilson in easier spots, closer to the rim. They'll slow the pace, test Indiana's discipline, and lean on their experience. But the pressure is no longer on the Fever, it's all on Vegas. Indiana, meanwhile, is loose. They've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. Stephanie White has them believing, and that belief is contagious. The veterans are steady, the young stars are fearless, and even the injured players on the bench are acting like extra coaches, fueling the energy. The Fever don't look like a team hoping to survive. They look like a team ready to rewrite the league's script. Yeah, I feel good. I mean, our group has seen it all. We wanted to come in and be the aggressor right away, to make sure that we were dictating on the defensive end, and we were dictating from a pace standpoint. They're champions for a reason. We knew that they were going to make runs. They made a big one in the third, and we responded with a big one. I'm proud of our team. It's one game, it's a long series, so we got to keep the main thing, but to come in here and to be able to steal this one was big for us. The symbolism of the night is impossible to miss. On the same day Aja Wilson was honored as the face of the WNBA, she was humbled in front of her own fans. And on that same night, Indiana, the team everyone doubted, won their first semifinal game in over a decade. It wasn't just an upset, it was a changing of the guard. History favors the bold. Game 1 wasn't a fluke, it was a blueprint. A team with nothing to lose, playing free, playing smart, and playing for each other, just proved they can go toe-to-toe with the two-time champs. If they replicate it in Game 2, Vegas will be staring at the kind of collapse no MVP trophy can cover up. The Fever didn't just take a game. They took the Aces' confidence, their home court, and their aura of invincibility. And now, the question isn't whether Indiana belongs, it's whether Vegas has enough left to survive.